Welcome back to Lima Foxtrot Mike November, otherwise known as Nice. It's actually been a while since we've looked at Nice Airport, and it's also been a while since we've looked at the Zibo 737. We're looking today at a straight-in landing, an IFR 10-mile approach, and this is not going to be an absolutely perfect landing. I think it qualifies as an acceptable landing, but certainly not as a great landing. I've been working on this approach and landing for a little while, and I thought I might as well pass on my experience of landing the aircraft. Of course, the first thing that you need to do is stabilize the aircraft. Flight director on, auto throttle on, speed, altitude hold, and the autopilot itself. This will be a flaps 30 landing, and auto brake, well, the spoiler is armed, and auto brakes are set to 3. A lot more obviously to do to get those refined and somewhere close to perfect. Obviously you can see the heads-up display, which I've left there for reference. I don't think you can flip that up from the 3D view, then you have to go into the iPad interface. If it's possible to flip it up, then feel free to leave a comment on how to do that. I haven't been able to find any sort of click spot, but the latest version may change that. I've just actually downloaded the latest version 3.33, I think it is. So let's just talk about the approach. The approach itself is pretty straightforward. It's pretty much on rails. Even when you disengage the autopilot, it's pretty straightforward. You will need to define a key or button for disengaging the autopilot and also disengaging auto throttle. But even when you come out of even when you disengage the autopilot, it's still straightforward. There's not any lateral movement. If you're not all that bothered about landing center line, you can just leave it as it is. Corrections for center line are fairly minimal. You want to be careful not to overcorrect. The landing itself is where it gets difficult, as you might expect. You'll hear people say flare at the 20 feet call out, and then you slowly pull a stick back and slowly pull the power back. That's a difficult technique to achieve. I bring the altitude call out up to 40 feet, which gives me enough time to get the flare done and to reduce the sink rate, to reduce the FPM to about approaching at least 100 feet per minute. Without that, I tend to hit the runway at about 500 feet per minute. I think the problem really is that as you're coming to the flare, the actual yoke in the aircraft is pitched back at about 0.0500, so that when you initially start to pull your stick back, you're working through that 0 to 0.500 range, so it's ineffective in the actual as you start to pull back on the stick. You're actually working through the range that the yoke is already pulled back to, so it's actually ineffective initially. If you look at the replay, you'll find that there's no actual change in FPM until late on, so you might want to bring that back a little bit at first. As you can see here, flaring, bringing the power back slowly, trying to stay on center line and touch down, and reverses. Reverses are a specific command rather than toggle reverse thrust. So that is how you can land the 737. Again, the approach is very simple, very straightforward. You just have to pick out an altitude call out that you can get the flare and power down in without hitting the runway at an excessive descent rate. And over time you can then look at reducing that to 30 feet and then possibly to 20 feet. So hope you found that useful, hope you found that interesting, and as always, feel free to like, comment and subscribe.